The millionaire only wanted to relive memories with his mother, but fate surprised him. On the same bench where he once promised eternal love sat his ex-wife, with 3 identical babies sleeping in her lap. If you like emotional dramas, subscribe to the channel and comment now where you're listening from. Continuing. The February sun cut through the canopies of the trumpet trees in Central Park with a golden violence that made Raphael Morrison squint. He walked beside his mother, Mrs. Helena, a woman in her early 70s, who still carried on her shoulders the proud posture of someone who raised a son alone in the less affluent boroughs of New York City. Even after all the success, all the fortune accumulated with his technology company, Raphael knew that in her eyes he was still that skinny boy who sold candies at traffic lights to help with household bills. "You're different, my son," Mrs. Helena murmured, adjusting her shawl over her shoulders as she watched tennis players on the nearby courts. "Heavier. As if you're carrying the whole world on your back." Raphael forced a smile. At 42, he commanded a tech empire valued in billions. But his mother could still read him like an open book. It was true that something was consuming him from within. Perhaps it was the loneliness of apartments that were too empty, or the constant feeling that all his success was just a shining armor covering a void he couldn't even name himself. "Just too much work, Mom. You know how it is." "Yes, I do. And I also know that money doesn't warm a bed or mend a broken heart." His mother's phrase hit him as always. Mrs. Helena had never liked Marina, his ex-wife, but she had also never rejoiced at the end of their marriage. She used to say that a man without a family was like a tree without roots. He could grow tall, but at the first strong storm, he would fall. It was when they rounded the bend of the lake that Raphael's world simply stopped. Sitting on a worn wooden bench, with her dark hair tied in a messy bun and her skin unevenly kissed by the sun, was Marina. Not the Marina of his nightmares and memories, always impeccable, always in control, but a fragile, exhausted, almost unrecognizable version. In her lap, 3 babies slept huddled in an improvised stroller, covered by a blanket that had seen better days. The impact was physical. Raphael felt his legs weaken, the air escape his lungs. Marina looked up, and for a second that seemed eternal. They stared at each other across the distance and the 3 years that separated them. There was no surprise in her gaze, only a deep weariness he had never seen before. "My goodness," Mrs. Helena whispered. "It's Marina." One of the babies began to cry, a sharp sound that cut through the morning air and brought Raphael back to reality. He approached slowly, as if walking on glass. Marina didn't stand up, merely adjusted the baby in her arms with a delicacy that contrasted with her disheveled appearance. "Hi, Raphael," she said, her voice hoarser than he remembered. "Mrs. Helena." "Girl, what happened to you?" His mother's voice was laden with genuine concern that caught Raphael by surprise. Marina smiled, but it was a joyless smile, full of poorly healed wounds. "It's a long story." Are they yours?" Raphael finally found his voice, though the words came out strangled, almost inaudible. "They are now." Marina kissed the forehead of the baby she held. "Their parents died. Maria was a Venezuelan refugee I met in London. When she found out she was sick, she begged me not to let them be separated." Raphael felt something twist in his chest. Marina had always been passionate about social causes, always fighting for those without a voice. It had been one of the things that attracted him to her in the beginning, and one of the things that drove them furthest apart in the end. "And you brought all 3 to the United States, alone?" "I had no choice." Marina's voice trembled slightly. "But the project I was developing there went wrong. The investor, well, let's just say he had other intentions besides business." The tone in which she said this made Raphael's blood boil. He knew that type of man well in the business world. Predators who used power and money to get what they wanted from women. "And now?" Mrs. Helena asked, sitting down beside Marina unceremoniously. "Where are you staying?" Marina hesitated. "We're waiting for a spot at a shelter. It should be available any time now." The lie was obvious. Raphael knew that look, the same one she used when trying to protect everyone around her. even if it meant sacrificing herself. He looked around and noticed the backpack leaning against the bench, too heavy to be just for a stroll. He noticed her crumpled clothes, the way she positioned herself between the babies and any sudden movement. "Hey, Marina," his voice came out lower, softer, "are you sleeping in the park?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "This is unacceptable," Mrs. Helena declared, standing up with a determination Raphael knew well. "These children are not spending another night out in the open." "Mrs. Helena, I can't accept charity." "Charity nothing, girl. This is basic humanity." Raphael watched the scene unfold, feeling like a spectator in his own life. His rational mind screamed caution. Marina had left his life 3 years ago, leaving only ruins and a divorce process that still made him wake up angry. But something deeper, something he had buried under layers of work and money, was awakening. "I have an empty apartment in Greenwich Village," he said before he could control himself. "It's temporary, just until you get organized." Marina stared at him, and for the first time since he'd seen her, her eyes showed real emotion, not gratitude. Raphael knew her too well to expect that, but a vulnerability she had always fought to hide. Why would you do that? The simple question carried 3 years of hurt, wounded pride, and unspoken words. Raphael could give several answers, because it was the right thing to do for the children, for his mother, who was already organizing things in her head. But the truth was simpler and infinitely more complicated. "Because I can't see you like this." The words hung in the air between them. Marina closed her eyes for a moment, as if fighting an internal battle. When she opened them again, there was an iron determination that Raphael recognized well. 3 months, she said. "In 3 months I can get back on my feet." "All right." A lie. Raphael knew that nothing about that situation was all right. He knew he was getting into an emotional mess that had taken him years to overcome. He knew Marina still kept secrets, that there were layers to that story he didn't know. But when he saw Mrs. Helena helping organize the babies in the stroller, when he saw Marina trying to hide the relief on her face, he knew there was no turning back. 2 hours later, he stood in the living room of the Greenwich Village apartment, watching Marina explore the space with the 3 babies in her arms. The place he had bought as an investment and never used suddenly seemed to come alive. The late afternoon light poured through the enormous windows, illuminating her face in a way that made Raphael remember why he had fallen in love with her years ago. "It's very beautiful," Marina said, still with that caution in her gestures, "and very big. Use it as if it were yours." She turned to face him, and Raphael saw that she was crying, not tears of sadness, but something more complex, relief mixed with shame, gratitude mixed with fear. "Raphael, I need you to know that." "You don't owe me any explanation," he interrupted her. Not now, but even as he said that, Raphael knew he needed answers. He needed to understand what had happened in those 3 years, why she had disappeared so completely, why she was back, and more importantly, he needed to understand why seeing her again made his chest tighten in a way he had sworn never to feel again. Marina nodded, as if she knew exactly what was going through his head. "It will take time," she said softly. "For me too." Raphael nodded and headed for the door. "I'll send someone to bring what you need. Food, clothes, cribs." "Raphael." He stopped in the doorway, without turning around. "Thank you." The word was simple, but it carried a weight he felt in his bones. When he finally left the apartment, Raphael leaned against the hallway wall and took a deep breath. In a few hours, his life had been turned upside down again. Marina was back, bringing with her 3 children who were not hers, and a story he didn't yet fully know. And for the first time in 3 years, Raphael felt completely, dangerously alive. The first few days were a careful dance around poorly healed wounds. Raphael would show up at the apartment with elaborate excuses. He had to check the installation, fix internet problems, bring documents he had forgotten there. Marina knew exactly what he was doing, but said nothing. There was something comforting in his presence, even with all the tension that still hung between them. It was on a Thursday morning that everything changed. Raphael arrived at the apartment to find Marina crying in the kitchen, one of the babies in her arms, obviously sick. Little Miguel, she had told him their names, had a high fever and difficulty breathing. "How long has he been like this?" Raphael grabbed his car keys without a second thought. Since last night, I thought it would pass, but we're going to Mount Sinai Hospital. At the hospital, while they waited in the pediatric emergency room, Marina finally told the full story. The project she was developing in London was an app called Maternal Network, a platform to connect single mothers and create support networks. The initial investor, Rodrigo Vance, had promised €5 million, but his intentions were otherwise. He pursued me for months, Marina said, her voice tense as they watched Miguel sleeping under oxygen. First, there were dinner invitations, then veiled threats. When I definitively refused, he sabotaged everything. He spread rumors that I had embezzled money, destroyed my reputation in the sector. Raphael felt the familiar anger rise in his throat. And what does that have to do with you being in the park? Marina hesitated. Rodrigo has connections in the United States. When I came back, I found out he was trying to register the app's patent in his name. I don't have money for a lawsuit. I have no way to fight it. Now you do. The words came out before Raphael could filter them. Marina stared at him, surprised. It's not charity, he continued. It's an investment. I saw the project. Marina, it's revolutionary. You don't even know how it works. Then explain it to me. Over the next few hours, while Miguel recovered, Marina detailed every aspect of the app. Raphael listened fascinated, not only by the brilliance of the idea, but by the passion she radiated when she spoke. It was the Marina he had known years ago, before their marriage became a battlefield over incompatible priorities and dreams. Why did you give up on me to chase after this? The question escaped during a pause in their conversation. Marina was silent for a long moment. Because you never truly believed. You were always respectful, always supported me with words, but I saw in your eyes that you thought they were just little projects of a bored rich woman. The accusation hurt because it had a kernel of truth. Raphael had always seen Marina's social projects as expensive hobbies, not as the life purpose they truly were for her. I was wrong, he admitted. You were. The simplicity of the answer was more devastating than any shout. They remained silent until the doctor announced that Miguel was out of danger. In the following weeks, Raphael immersed himself in rebuilding Marina's project, with an obsession that surprised everyone, including himself. He hired the best lawyers to fight Rodrigo Vance, invested in the platform's programming, and used his contacts to secure strategic partnerships. But it was during a meeting with developers that Marina discovered the extent of the problem. Rodrigo had not only tried to steal her idea, he had fabricated evidence that she was an international swindler. The lawsuit he was filing against her could result in imprisonment. He's trying to destroy me completely, Marina said, showing Raphael the documents she had received. He thinks that if he turns me into a criminal, no one will question when he launches his version of the app. Raphael read the papers with growing indignation. This is false, completely fabricated. Of course it is. But he has money and influence. What do I have? You have me. The declaration hung between them. Marina stared at him with an expression Raphael couldn't decipher. Why? She asked softly. Why are you doing this for me? Raphael could give easy answers. For justice, for the children, because it was the right thing to do. But sitting there, looking at the woman who had shared his life for 5 years, he understood that the truth was much simpler and infinitely more complicated. Because I love you, he said. I always have. Even when I hated you, I loved you. Marina closed her eyes. Raphael, I know I messed everything up between us. I know I was arrogant and blind and probably a terrible husband, but I won't let that son of a bitch destroy you. The war against Rodrigo Vance lasted 3 months. It was dirty, brutal, fought in courtrooms and boardrooms, in the media and behind the scenes of power. Raphael used every resource he had, called in every favor he could, moved mountains to expose the truth. The turning point came when they discovered that Rodrigo had used the same scheme with other female entrepreneurs. An investigation revealed a pattern of harassment, blackmail, and intellectual property theft that spanned a decade. It's over, Raphael said, entering the apartment with a pile of newspapers. The headlines were devastating for Rodrigo. Businessman arrested for blackmail scheme. Network of harassment in business sector exposed. Marina leafed through the newspapers in silence. When she finished, she collapsed onto the couch and began to cry. Not tears of sadness, but of relief so profound it felt physical. "It's over," she repeated, as if she couldn't believe it. Raphael sat beside her. "Now we rebuild, the right way." Marina turned to face him. "We, if you want to." The silence that followed was different from all the others they had shared. It wasn't tense or uncomfortable, but charged with possibilities. "I've changed," Marina said finally. "Me too. I don't know if it will work out this time." Raphael extended his hand, touching her face with a delicacy that made Marina close her eyes. "I don't know either, but I want to try." The kiss that followed was inevitable, laden with 3 years of longing, hurt, and unresolved love. When they separated, the 3 babies were awake in their crib, watching with that intense curiosity of young children. "They'll need a father," Marina said, her voice trembling. "They already have one." The decision to officially take custody of the children was not easy. It involved lawyers, psychologists, social worker visits, but when the process was finalized, Raphael found himself holding 3 birth certificates, listing him as the father, Miguel, Anna, and Isabella Morrison, his family. The launch of the Maternal Network app happened 6 months later, at a party in the Greenwich Village apartment itself, which was now officially their home. Raphael watched Marina present the project to journalists and investors, radiant in a way he had never seen. "She's incredible," Mrs. Helena commented, appearing beside her son with Isabella in her arms. "She is? Do you truly love her this time?" Raphael smiled. "I always did. Mom, I just didn't know how to love properly." The party was at its peak when Raphael received a message on his phone. It was from an unknown number, but he immediately recognized the tone. Rodrigo Vance, even from prison, trying one last gambit. "You think you won? I'll get out of here and destroy everything you've built." Raphael showed the message to Marina. She read it and simply laughed. "Let him try," she said, picking up her phone and blocking the number. "Now we're the ones with the power." Raphael pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent he had missed for 3 years. "How can you be so strong?" "I learned from the best," she replied, nodding towards Mrs. Helena, who was orchestrating a food fight among the 3 children. "And from you. From me. You taught me that strength isn't just about never falling, it's about always getting back up." Later, when the last guests had left and the children were asleep, Raphael and Marina sat on the balcony, watching New York City sparkle below. "Do you think it will work out this time?" Marina asked, her head resting on his shoulder. "I think we've changed enough to try," Raphael replied. "But if it doesn't, at least we tried the right way." Marina smiled, always the romantic. "I learned from the best." The future was still full of uncertainties. The app was just beginning. The children would bring challenges they could barely imagine. And there would always be the possibility that past wounds would resurface. But there, that night, with the city spread before them like a map of infinite possibilities, Raphael knew he had everything he had always sought: a family, a purpose, and the woman he loved by his side, not because she needed him, but because she chose to be there. "I love you," Marina whispered in the dark. "I love you too," Raphael replied, "forever." And this time, he knew that forever was more than a promise. It was a choice they would make every day, a constant construction, a love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger than ever. Below, New York City continued its nocturnal dance, indifferent to the personal dramas unfolding in its illuminated apartments. But for Raphael and Marina, the city seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating with them the miracle of a rediscovered love.